The ballroom sparkled beneath the late afternoon sunlight pouring through floor-to-ceiling windows, each crystal of the chandeliers shimmering like 1,000 tiny diamonds. Guests in designer suits and glittering gowns moved gracefully between champagne tables and velvet couches. But in the midst of that flawless, high-society scene, one man stood completely out of place. Ethan Cole was wearing a black suit that fit a little too snugly at the shoulders and shoes that had clearly seen better days. He wasn't part of this world, the world of billion-dollar smiles, cold handshakes, and hidden motives. He was just a single dad from a quiet neighborhood who fixed broken things for a living, furniture, fences, and occasionally his daughter's toys when her heart broke over a missing wheel or cracked doll arm. But today he was here because he had to be. Not for himself, but for his daughter Ava. She'd won a scholarship sponsored by the prestigious Everland Corporation, and he wanted to thank the woman who had made it possible. That woman was Celeste Monroe, CEO of Everland, heiress, one of the youngest women in the country to take over a multi-billion-dollar empire. She was standing across the room, poised and elegant, her golden hair in a perfect low chignon, every move calculated, every smile measured. To the world, she was untouchable. But tonight, her carefully constructed world was about to collide with Ethan's. Before we dive deeper into their unforgettable story, if you believe in kindness, redemption, and second chances, please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Journal. Your support helps us bring more heart-touching stories to life. Now, let's begin. Ethan had just finished speaking with one of the event coordinators when Celeste approached him. The soft click of her heels on marble echoed faintly before she stopped right in front of him. She looked composed, but her eyes, those piercing gray eyes, held something. Unexpected. Desperation. "Mr. Cole, right?" she asked, offering a practiced smile. "Ethan Cole, Ava's father." He nodded. "Yes. Thank you again for..." "Ethan," she interrupted quietly, her tone shifting from professional to urgent. "I need a favor, just for tonight." He blinked, confused. "A favor?" "Yes," she exhaled slowly, lowering her voice so no one else could hear. "My ex-fiancé just arrived. He's here to embarrass me in front of the board. I can't let that happen. So, I need you to pretend to be my date. Just act like you're mine for tonight." The words hit him like a slap. Ethan's first instinct was to refuse. He didn't belong here, not in her world, not in this charade. But when he looked into her eyes, he saw something raw. Fear, vulnerability. And behind that, the exhaustion of someone who'd been fighting battles alone for too long. He ran a hand through his hair, thinking of Ava, how much she looked up to Celeste after meeting her at the scholarship event. Maybe this was his chance to do something kind, even if it made him uncomfortable. But before he could answer, her ex, Julian Kane, a tall, sharp-jawed man in a silver tuxedo, approached them, smirking. Well, Julian said, glancing at Ethan. "Didn't think you'd find anyone willing to stand next to you again, Celeste." Celeste's shoulders tensed. Her career, her dignity, her image, all of it could be shattered in a single whisper in this crowd. And that's when Ethan did something that changed everything. He reached for her hand. The touch was firm, protective. He pulled her gently closer and said calmly, "Actually, she didn't have to look far. I've been by her side for months." Julian's smirk faltered. The way Ethan spoke, grounded, sincere, made it impossible to tell if it was an act or truth. He looked at Celeste, but she simply smiled and rested her hand on Ethan's chest, playing along. "Now, if you'll excuse us," Ethan said, guiding her away. As they walked through the crowd, Celeste's pulse raced. She couldn't understand it. This man she barely knew, this single dad with oil-stained hands and a second-hand suit, had just rescued her with more dignity and grace than anyone in her life ever had. When they reached the quiet terrace overlooking the gardens, Celeste finally spoke. "You didn't have to do that." Ethan smiled faintly. "Yeah, well, I figured you didn't deserve whatever that guy had planned. Besides, I've got a daughter teaches you when to step up." That line made her pause. There was something in his tone, an ache, quiet but heavy. She looked at him differently now, noticing the tiredness in his eyes. "Your daughter, she's Ava, right?" He nodded. 8 years old. Smart, curious, way too brave for her own good. His voice softened. "Her mom passed when she was 5. Been just us since then." Celeste's chest tightened. She had everything: wealth, success, power, but at that moment, she realized how lonely she was. She had built walls so high that even the people closest to her had stopped trying to climb them. But here was this man who had lost so much, and yet his voice carried warmth, life, love. The music from the ballroom floated faintly through the air. She looked at him again, noticing the faint smile tugging at his lips. "You know," she said quietly, "you're actually pretty good at pretending." He chuckled. "Maybe. But the thing is, I don't think I was pretending." Celeste's breath caught for a second. His tone was casual, but his eyes those kind, steady eyes held a truth that stirred something deep inside her. As the evening went on, they continued their little act. But the more time Celeste spent beside Ethan, the less it felt like acting. He made her laugh, real laughter, the kind she hadn't known in years. He spoke to her like she was human, not a CEO on a pedestal. When they danced, she realized his hand on her back felt protective, not possessive. And when people looked at them, for the first time, Celeste didn't feel like she was performing. She felt seen. Meanwhile, Ethan found himself mesmerized. Celeste wasn't what he expected. Beneath the polished armor was a woman who was exhausted from fighting everyone's expectation, a woman who missed being told she was enough. But as the night drew on, the truth of their worlds began to settle in again. The gap between them wasn't small, it was an ocean. When the event ended, Celeste walked him to the parking lot. The night air was cool, the city skyline painted in gold and violet hues. "Thank you," she said softly. "You saved me tonight." Ethan smiled, slipping his hands into his pockets. "You don't owe me anything. Just glad I could help." She hesitated, watching him open his old pickup truck's door. "You're different," she murmured. "Most people want something from me." He looked at her, then down at his calloused hands. "Maybe I do," he said with a faint grin. "I want you to remember what it feels like to be cared for, even if it's just for one night." Her lips parted slightly, but no words came out. She wanted to say something, anything, but her voice betrayed her. Before she could gather herself, Ethan started the truck and drove away, leaving her standing under the city lights, heart racing in a way it hadn't in years. The following week, Celeste couldn't stop thinking about him. She saw his face in meetings, heard his voice when she looked at Ava's scholarship photo. It didn't make sense. He was ordinary, unpolished, everything her world didn't approve of. But he was real, and she was starving for real. A few days later, she made an excuse to visit the small community workshop that Everland sponsored, the one Ethan managed. He was fixing a wooden bench when she walked in. He looked up, surprised, wiping his hands on a rag. "Ms. Monroe," he said, "didn't expect to see you here." "Celeste," she corrected softly. "Please." He smiled. "All right, Celeste, what brings you here?" She hesitated, then said, "I wanted to thank you again, properly." He raised an eyebrow. "Didn't we already do that?" "Maybe," she said, stepping closer. "But that night, you reminded me of something I'd forgotten. That success means nothing if you have no one to share it with." Ethan didn't respond right away. He looked at her carefully, trying to read her expression. "You don't have to feel sorry for me, Celeste. I'm not a charity case." Her voice cracked slightly. "That's not why I'm here." She took a deep breath. "I'm here because when you held my hand that night, I felt safe. For the first time in years." The workshop fell silent, except for the faint hum of city noise outside. Ethan took a slow step forward, his gaze steady. "And what about tomorrow?" he asked. "You'll go back to board meetings and headlines. I'll go back to fixing tables and making dinner for my kid. You sure our worlds can mix?" Celeste smiled sadly. "Maybe they're not supposed to. But maybe that's what makes it real." He looked at her for a long moment, then said quietly, "You know, when you asked me to pretend to be yours for one night, I didn't think much of it. But now I wish you'd asked me to be yours for real." Her breath hitched, tears glimmering in her eyes. "Ethan," he shook his head gently, "you don't owe me an answer. Just don't forget what you felt that night. You deserve that kind of love." Weeks later, Celeste attended another event. Cameras flashed, reporters shouted her name, but her heart was somewhere else. When she stepped onto the stage to announce a new community initiative, she paused before her final line and smiled softly. "Sometimes," she said, her voice trembling just a little, "the most extraordinary people are the ones who never seek attention. They're the ones who fix what's broken, not for reward but out of love." This initiative is dedicated to them. The audience applauded, unaware that her gaze had drifted toward the back where Ethan stood with Ava, smiling quietly. Their eyes met across the room. No words were needed, because sometimes love doesn't need to be claimed. It just needs to be felt and remembered. If this story touched your heart, please like, share, comment, and subscribe to Kindness Journal. Every gesture helps us spread more hope and compassion through stories like this. Special request, comment below with one word that describes what love means to you after hearing Ethan and Celeste's story.